Meat City, baby.
Hello and welcome back to Meat City Gaming. JD here with another video in the Banner Saga. This is chapter 3 of our walkthrough for the hard difficulty playthrough of the story mode of the Banner Saga. And chapter 3 is where things really start to pick up in terms of the battles for the game. You get kind of the tutorial in chapter 1. You get you get some battles in chapter 2, but they're kind of one-off story-based. It's against bandits or other humans. Chapter 3 is where things really pick up because you've got a full army, you've got Varl giants that you can use in your battles, you're against the dredge for almost every fight, so you really get to experience the main enemies of the game, and there's just a ton of battles scattered throughout this chapter. It's, again, a long journey. Your caravan has to get from the town where they kind of stopped at the end of the chapter 1, and they're on this long march, and it kind of deviates where they're going, and it follows the storyline, and all along the way you are just peppered with opportunities for battles. Some you can avoid, some you can engage in, some you are forced to engage in, many that you are forced to engage in. And remember, we're trying to do two main things here with this playthrough. We are trying to unlock the hard difficulty playthrough without losing a single battle. Remember, when you go into these fights, you can lose, and if you do, you get penalized. Your characters get injured, you may not get the rewards or the renown, but you don't lose the game. It's not a game over state because your characters don't die from losing the battle. So don't lose a battle. If it looks like it's going poorly, reload the most recent save you have and try again, right? The first turn can go really badly. If you set up your squad kind of in the wrong spot, kind of in the wrong order, right? You may fall just short of making the first attack, and the enemy may get all the first attacks. And if so, they could take out one of your characters, they could damage your big damage dealers, and then that character's damage is limited for the rest of the fight, right? Your health is your attack power in this game. So then you can come back the second time and say, I remember that enemy went first, so I want to make sure I'm positioned this way right when you come back in the second time. So you do have a little bit of leeway with that. So that being said, we have the two main functions here. We want to defeat the hard mode difficulty without losing a battle, and we want to get 6 of our characters up to level 5 so that we can do the training mode requirement where you beat a training mode with a full party of level 5 characters. Now, the interesting thing about that is you kind of have to do that training mission with the other caravan, with Rook's human caravan. And you won't get to use some of these characters in it just because the logistics don't work out. You can't get enough characters to level 5 with this caravan in the amount of time that you have them. So on top of that, you have to keep that in mind, right? We want to get characters leveled up, but only the most important ones, because you don't have spare renown to upgrade characters that aren't important, because then you won't be able to reach the 6 getting all the way up to level 5. The other thing you need to do is be preparing for the final battle of the game. The final battle is different than all the other battles, way harder, and you need to get your team ready for that battle as well. Thankfully, there's a lot of overlap between the characters that you want in the final battle and in the training battle, but it's not 100% overlap, right? So, how do we do that? Well, in this chapter, the main character that you want to make sure you get focused on and get up to level 5 during this chapter is Gunnulf. He's introduced in the first chapter in the training mission. He swings that big sword. He can spin around in a circle and attack multiple enemies. And I believe in the Banner Saga 1, he is the character that can get the highest attack power out of anyone that you can use. His damage is crazy. He can get, I think, up to 18 health, which again is his attack power, and you can increase that by another 3 pretty easily with items that you'll find along the way. So 21 attack power, which is awesome, right? You can dish out 21 damage, and obviously it'll get reduced by armor. So you have 21 potential damage that will then get reduced. And there are a couple of enemies that have close to 20 armor or 20 armor or a little over 20 armor, but not many. And even then, you'll still be able to do some damage, even if you're tied. Remember, you can use those willpower stars to go over the top. So you can almost always do damage with Gunnulf. He's great. You need to get him going early. I like to get his willpower up to 3 so he can move extra, right? If you only have him where he can spend 1 star per action, his movement is going to be very limited, and you also can't max out that damage by bumping up his stars if you're only limited to increasing by 1 star at a time. So make sure you do both. Make sure you max his health out very quickly, and then also max, I think it's the green skill, it's willpower, I believe, which allows you to spend how many bonus points on each given action. So Gunnulf is your first focus, and because you have him in Chapter 1, there's that first battle in the tavern where it's like Gunnulf and 3 kind of randos. You can kill every single enemy, as I did in that Chapter 1 video, with Gunnulf, and be well on your way to getting the kill requirements for getting him to level 5. And then you can easily finish him off early here in Chapter 3. The other ones that you want to focus on are Hakon and Yarissa. Hakon he's kind of the leader of this caravan. He is also a giant. He is a different class than Gunnulf. He doesn't have a spin attack. He has kind of a big slam, and it's kind of useless. It helps a little bit. I found it not that great. But again, really good stats on him. He can do a ton of damage. He actually has better armor, I think, than Gunnulf does, so he's better to tank, but also give some punishment back. So Hakon is very important, but he will not be eligible for the training mission where you use the full squad of level 5 characters. So keep that in mind, but there's plenty of points here to go around, so Hakon is another one I would focus on and try to get to level 5 before the end of the chapter. And then the third one is Yarissa. She is a human archer, and she can light the ground on fire. She has a really cool special attack where she fires a fire arrow at a square, and then it does damage to that square, and then in a plus sign, right? 1 square up, 1 down, 1 left, and 1 right of the square that you target. Now, the square that you target, she also does her break damage, and she can have good break damage. And on top of that, you can give her a break damage item. So she is crucial especially for the end boss battle. You can have her doing 6 or 7 or 8 break damage with her maxed out special ability on the square that she hits. And that's just going to destroy the armor of 90% of the enemies that you face. And even the big boss guys, that is going to do a big chunk. So she's great for that. The plus sign also takes 2 damage direct to health. It doesn't have an armor check. So always you can break armor and do damage to the target square. And then if anybody is on those adjacent squares of that plus sign of where you're targeting, they're taking 2 damage right to their health right off the top, and you're limiting their max damage. So she's great. She has super low health. She's super fragile. She can't have much armor, but her break and her special ability are really, really good. So those are the 3 that you want to focus on in this chapter. And you can do that and more. If you engage in all the battles and you do really well, you'll have some spare points to give to somebody else. I don't know if any of them are super relevant for this game. Eric is an interesting option if you want to put points into. He has some kind of special skills that come up in the sequel game, in the Banner Saga 2. So maybe that's somewhere to go, but not anyone that's going to really pay off in this first game. And so the other thing you have to worry about, in addition to leveling these characters up, is making sure you don't lose them. Making sure they don't die or otherwise leave your caravan. That can happen, as we discussed, a whole lot, and it's based on dialogue options. So, Gunnulf, and again, there are spoiler stories here, right? This is a walkthrough, this is an achievement guide, so I need to tell you the pitfalls that can happen so that you can avoid them. So, if you're looking for a spoiler-free experience, play the game on normal, play it on easy first, and then come back and watch these videos for some tips, some tweaks to get through on hard. Alright, so, Gunnulf has a chance to die in this chapter. At the beginning of the game, you're kind of pulling the money cart. You're the tax collector, Ubin, who goes around and collects the taxes from the settlements. Well, that cart is still with you in this chapter, and after a battle, a pop-up will come up, a dialogue will come up. It's right after a battle. I think it's the first time maybe that you meet the ranged dredge. Pop-up will come up, and it'll say the cart is falling over the cliff, and Gunnulf's going to try and save it. You have to tell him not to save the cart. Let go and let go again. You got to tell him twice, but you got to tell him or he's going to die. So tell him to let go of the cart, tell him to let go again, he'll survive, and then you'll have him for the rest of the game. And you want him, he's really good for the rest of this entire trilogy. You can also lose, you can't lose Hakon, so that's good. Put those points into him, and he'll stay with you for the rest of this game without any trouble. You can also lose Yerissa. She's part of Ludin, so the story here is that the Varl prince and the human prince are going on this journey together to improve relations. Well, Ludin is the human prince, and Yerissa is one of his bodyguards. And so there are conflicts between Hakon and Ludin throughout the chapter. And there's a certain point where you can lose your temper with Ludin and basically send him off in a different direction than you. You're going to go into this tower where there's danger, and you're like, get this guy out of here, and you can like knock him out or you can send him away. Don't do it, because if you do, you will also lose his bodyguard, Yerissa, who, as I said, is very, very good. There's a second way that you can also lose Yerissa later on. Again, it's close to the end of the chapter, and there'll be an opportunity right before a fight with the dredge to kind of mold how the battle unfolds. And you can get some opinions from, I think, Moger. He'll give you some options for the battle. One of those options is to light a fire like around yourself. Like you use the fire as a distraction around you to get away. And if you're paying attention throughout the dialogue of the story, you realize that Varl do not like fire. It is kind of their weakness. They have a fear of it. So putting the fire close to your own army is one of the suggestions, because the dredge, it also is good against the dredge. Don't do that, because it goes terribly. You're going to lose people. You're going to lose morale. You're going to lose the part of your caravan, a bunch of fighters. It's a mess. And in the chaos, you will also lose Yerissa, which you don't want to do. Now, there is another option for you to set a fire away from your army as a distraction so that you can then engage less of the dredge army as you walk away. That one's fine. It's actually, I think, the best option there. So just be careful. It's use the fire away from your army as a distraction. That one's good. Setting the fire like around your army to help push away the dredge or scare away the dredge, or however it's worded, that one's bad. Don't do that one, because you will lose Yerissa. And that's it. If you avoid those pitfalls, you'll keep those important characters through the end of the chapter. And I think for all of them, that's it. You can't lose them again for the rest of the game. The other thing I do want to mention is when you get towards the very end of the battle, I mentioned this tower that you're heading towards. I think it's called Ridgehorn. When you get there, the first battle that you have, so you get this cutscene where you see your army marching in. It doesn't count your day timer. There's certain times where that happens. When you get to like the Godstones, and when you get to certain places, you kind of switch camera view of your caravan. The day timer doesn't track as your caravan moves. You're kind of just getting introduced to the scene. That happens at Ridgehorn, and then after you kind of settle there, you go up into this tower to have a battle. And that starts a very long, continuous streak of battles. So usually you have a battle, and after it, there'll be a very quick save. And so if you make a mistake with a dialogue, with a fight, whatever, you can go back, load your save, and you haven't really lost much. When you start that fight on the tower in Ridgehorn, it's like the next 5 battles. I would say when you get there, when you get to the tower in Ridgehorn, finish the chapter. There might be one save point in the middle there somewhere, but it's really far in, and you don't want to risk it because there's so many battles here. They are tough. On the hard difficulty, they can cause you some trouble. And if you get through the first 2 really clean, and then you mess up the third one, or you get through the first 2 really clean, and then you have to stop for the day and come back and you lose your progress, you got to go all the way back. So set aside at least a half hour to an hour to get through all of these battles. They are tough. They take a while. There is some time commitment involved. And be ready to grind it out, right? If you make it really clean through the first 3 battles, maybe the 4th battle you pick the easier option for the battle, and I'll talk about that in a minute, so that you don't have the last toughest fight, which will screw everything up and make you have to go back all over again. The way you can do that, you can check if you want to reload, pull up the start menu, go to load, and you can see the day. It'll say, your top most recent save will say day 15 or day 75, whatever it is. And check that with what you are at currently in game. If you have, it's day 77 as you go into this next battle, and you're like, oh, I messed up, I want to go back, go to your load screen. If it's day 77 and the load says that your last load is day 75, well, you've missed the last 2 days. So if any battles have happened in there, you're going to have to replay them. So just keep that in mind. That last battle, series of battles from the tower in Ridgehorn is a grind. There are no breaks like save points in the middle there. And I mentioned an easy option for the battle. That's one additional mechanic that really comes up here in Chapter 3 and then kind of throughout the game at a bunch of opportunities. So when you have, there's certain fights that are kind of fixed by the story, and those are set. It's going to be, you against these 4 or 5 characters. They're going to be positioned as such that they're the same every time. But there's these larger, I think they call them wars, or they're larger battles where these 2 armies meet. Your whole caravan is against a whole dredge army, and they happen a little bit differently. So when those two entities collide, you get an announcement, hey, this battle is happening, and you get a summary of the forces available on each side. You've got this many warriors and fighters, and the dredge have this many on their side. And how do you want to approach it? And I think there's 5 options, and they go top to bottom in terms of aggressiveness. There's charge right in, which is the idea is you're taking the brunt of the action. Your personal party is going to charge to the front, take the toughest enemies, take the tough fight, which will save the rest of your army from having to do that, and you'll have low or no casualties if you're successful. And then they kind of step down from there. There's a, take a balanced approach, gauge their strengths and weaknesses and match yours against it. There's a, fight defensively, put your shields up and kind of get away if you can. There's a retreating battle one, which is, let your army take the brunt of it while you just maybe get in the mix a little bit. And then I think there's one that's auto-resolve. You don't fight, you just oversee the battle, which is nothing. You just let your 2 armies go at it. And you'll take, again, the more aggressive you are, if you're successful, the less losses your caravan, your army will take. But the harder the fight will be. And they do change. You'll get bigger, tougher, more elite enemies if you do the charge battle than if you do some of the more conservative options. The other thing that happens in these war battles, so you'll have the first fight. It'll be your team of 6 against whatever the dredge have out there. It can be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dredge, on the field. You'll have that battle. Then once it's over, assuming you've won, right? That's the idea here. We don't want to lose any battles. You've won, defeated the dredge. You then get an option saying, hey, you won. Do you want to charge back in and inflict more damage as the enemy retreats? Or do you just want to take your victory and get out? You almost always, if you can afford it, and even if you can't, then maybe you go back and reload. You want that second fight because it's another opportunity for additional renown and kills. And remember, we need those to get our characters leveled up. And also, if you win that second round, you get an item every time. You get an item that can be equipped, an accessory, whatever, to go on your characters. And some of those can be very good as well. The problem is they are very dangerous because you've just gone through this big battle against a whole pre-planned fight. You can have characters that are very weak, close to being injured, and if you get injured in hard mode, I think it's a 5-day penalty. It's brutal. And the big problem is you lose control, right? So when you get into the fight, you kind of get a feel for, okay, I know the turn order, I know the positioning, I can kind of control the battle how I want to influence who's going to go next and protect my weaker units and plan my attacks. Well, when you win, when you strike down that last enemy, if you then say continue the fight, your characters stay right where they are, the enemy spawns in, and I think it's random. I've never been able to detect a pattern or at least spend the time to learn the pattern, and they get to go first. So if you have, your weak archer is in the back behind your 2 big tanky Varl giants, and you get the last enemy down, great, and then you say, all right, let's go in for the next battle. The enemy can spawn behind your archer because that's one of the borders of the map, and they could take the first turn, and they could walk up and slap down your archer, and now you just made it through the first battle without any injuries, and you're starting off this second round losing an archer. Now you've got an injury. Now you've got somebody who's going to be weak for the next 5 days until you can rest them and recover. And then maybe even you lose, right? You lost, your archer. Now can you continue to do the fight? Can you win and pull it out? And so you got to do it. You want to do it. But you need to think about that, rather than let your guys get spread out at the end of the fight and say, oh, okay, I'm just going to use these last 2 guys to hack down the last remaining enemy, and I won't worry, I'll let my other 3 guys just sit where they are and rest, right? Well, instead of doing that, make sure you're thinking about positioning them. Get them, up into the corner and then protected with your giant so you can get that last strike and you're still a cohesive unit so that you're ready to battle the next group of enemies as they come in and still have your formation proper and still have your weaker units protected. So, that in a nutshell is Chapter 3 and an introduction into the war mechanics and some insight into the characters that are the most important and how you can keep them alive and keep them from losing or leaving your party. It's a lot of fun. This is a fun chapter, but it is a long one. It is a grind. It's tons and tons of battles, but it's great. It's a really good way. You really start to get your teeth into the battle mechanics and understand it, and the lessons you learn here, you'll be able to apply through the rest of the game, and hopefully that'll help you navigate this hard difficulty playthrough. So, that's going to wrap up the video. Enjoy the rest of the fight. You can see how I approach these things, the choices that I made, how I got through the fights. But again, a step-by-step battle instruction isn't really going to be helpful because there's just so many options, so many variables, so many things that can be random or go wrong that wouldn't be useful. But big picture items, strategy tips, things to think about, I think are going to be helpful. And so good luck with your Chapter 3 playthrough. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
dread grips me as we approach Grofheim. None of us expected to see a city unscathed. But what we find steals the very breath from my lungs.